The red dawn, the darkness of space, shimmered like oil on water, then tore apart in a cascade of crimson light. One by one, the warships of the Vorthok Empire burst through the dimensional barriers, their blood-red hulls gleaming like fresh wounds against the starfield. 9,900 vessels emerged in perfect formation, each one a testament to the Empire's 1,000-year dominance over the galaxy. Admiral Sarah Chen watched the display from the bridge of the UES Defiance, humanity's flagship stationed at the edge of the Kepler system. Her weathered hands gripped the command rail as the tactical readouts painted an impossible picture. The largest fleet in recorded history had just arrived at humanity's doorstep, and they hadn't come to negotiate. "Captain Webb confirmed those numbers," Chen said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they faced. Captain Marcus Webb, a veteran of the Centauri campaigns, ran his fingers across the holographic interface. His dark eyes reflected the crimson glow of the enemy fleet as he verified the sensor data. "Confirmed, Admiral. 9,900 vessels, dreadnoughts, carriers, battlecruisers, and support craft. They're maintaining standard Imperial formation." Dr. Elena Buscus, the fleet's chief science officer, looked up from her console with barely concealed amazement. "The energy signatures are off the charts. Each of their dreadnoughts carries more firepower than our entire defense grid. This isn't just an invasion force, it's a statement." Chen nodded grimly. The Vorthok Empire had ruled the galaxy through overwhelming force for centuries. Their crimson fleets were legend, steamrolling entire civilizations that dared to resist. Humanity had been fortunate to remain beneath their notice for so long, quietly building colonies in the Outer Rim systems. But their luck had finally run out. "Commander Okafor, what's our defensive status?" Chen asked, turning to the young officer who had coordinated the system's fortifications. "Commander," Zara Okafor's fingers danced across her tactical display, her expression growing more troubled with each passing second. "We have 47 vessels, Combatradi Admiral. The orbital platforms are operational, but they're designed for pirates and raiders, not a full Imperial fleet. At current estimates, we're outnumbered more than 200 to 1. The bridge fell silent, except for the low hum of the ship's systems. Every officer present understood the mathematics of their situation. This wasn't a battle they could win through conventional means. The Vorthok had brought enough firepower to crack planets, and humanity's presence in the Kepler system was about to be erased from existence. Across the void, aboard the massive flagship Eternal Conquest, Warlord Kroon surveyed the human positions, with the confidence of a predator studying its prey. His elongated skull gleamed in the bridge's red lighting, and his 4 eyes tracked the pathetic human formations with casual disdain. The Vorthok had conquered hundreds of species, and humans appeared no different from any other upstart civilization that needed to be reminded of their place. "Sub-Commander Vex, analyze their defensive positions," Kroon commanded, his voice carrying the authority of absolute power. The younger Vorthok officer's claws clicked against his console as he processed the sensor data. "Warlord, they maintain minimal defensive capability, primitive chemical propulsion, basic energy shields, and what appears to be kinetic projectile weapons. Their largest vessel measures only 600 meters in length." Kroon's mandibles clicked in amusement. The humans were even more pathetic than intelligence reports had suggested. "How refreshing. It has been too long since we faced an enemy that remembered their proper place in the galaxy's hierarchy." The massive view screen showed the human fleet beginning to retreat toward the inner system, their smaller vessels scattering like insects before the approaching storm. It was exactly what Kroon had expected. Lesser species always ran when confronted with true power. "Deploy the advanced squadrons," Kroon ordered. "We shall give them the honor of witnessing imperial might before they are consumed by it." Meanwhile, on the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Chen watched the Vorthok fleet begin its advance with the calm of someone who had spent sleepless nights preparing for this moment. The retreat she had ordered was proceeding exactly as planned, but not for the reasons the enemy assumed. "Dr. Vasquez, are the mining colonies ready?" Chen asked quietly. The scientist nodded, her fingers working rapidly across her console. "All 17 asteroid mining facilities have confirmed their status. The conversion protocols are complete, and they're maintaining communication silence as ordered." Captain Webb frowned as he monitored the retreating fleet. "Admiral, the Vorthok are taking the bait. They're spreading their formation to pursue our scattered vessels. But I have to ask, are we really going to abandon the outer colonies?" Chen's expression hardened. "Captain, those colonies have been working around the clock for 6 months. Every mining station, every cargo hauler, every piece of industrial equipment in this system has been converted according to Dr. Vasquez's specifications. We're not abandoning anything. We're leading them into the most sophisticated trap in human history." The truth was something no alien intelligence service had discovered. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their numbers. It was their ability to adapt and improvise. When early warning systems had detected the Vorthok fleet's approach 6 months ago, the colonies hadn't panicked. They had transformed. Every mining laser had been converted into a weapon. Every cargo ship had been fitted with improvised armor and weaponry. Every asteroid base had been turned into a fortress. The Kepler system wasn't just home to human colonies, it was home to human ingenuity. And that made it the most dangerous place in the galaxy for an overconfident enemy. As the Vorthok fleet advanced deeper into the system, their sensors detected what appeared to be a standard evacuation. Civilian transports fleeing toward the inner planets, military vessels falling back to defend the core worlds, and mining operations shutting down in the face of inevitable defeat. It was a pattern they had seen countless times before. Warlord Kroon stood before the massive tactical display, watching the human retreat with satisfaction. They flee like all the others. Deploy hunting packs to pursue their cargo vessels. We shall harvest their resources and add their worlds to the Empire. But Subcommander Vex noticed something unusual in the sensor readings. "Warlord, the energy signatures from the asteroid belt are ... inconsistent. Some of the mining stations appear to be maintaining full power despite the evacuation." Kroon's expression showed mild interest. Stubborn miners refusing to abandon their claims. How admirably futile. Mark those locations for immediate destruction once we secure the system. The Vorthok fleet continued its advance, confident in their overwhelming superiority. Their crimson hulls gleamed in the light of Kepler's star as they spread out to encompass the entire system. It was a formation designed to prevent escape and ensure total victory, the same tactic that had crushed civilizations across the galaxy. On the Defiance, Admiral Chen monitored the enemy's movement with growing satisfaction. The Vorthok were following their predictable doctrine, spreading their massive fleet across the system to prevent any possibility of escape. They were strong, disciplined, and completely unprepared for what humanity had prepared for them. "Commander Okafor, initiate Phase 1. Chen commanded. Throughout the asteroid belt, mining stations that had appeared abandoned suddenly came to life. But instead of the normal industrial operations, these facilities began powering up weapons. systems that had been carefully hidden within their superstructure. Cargo ships that had seemed to be fleeing suddenly changed course, revealing armor, plating, and weapon arrays that transformed them from civilian vessels into improvised warships. The trap was set, and the Vorthok fleet was walking directly into it. Dr. Vasquez monitored the energy readings from across the system. All stations report ready, Admiral. The Ghost Protocol is active and awaiting your signal. Chen nodded, her eyes never leaving the tactical display. The Vorthok had brought overwhelming force to crush humanity, but they had made a critical error. They had assumed that superior numbers and technology would be enough to defeat a species they had never truly understood. Captain Webb, open Channel 2, all units, Chen ordered. It's time to show the galaxy what happens when you underestimate the human spirit. The communication array crackled to life, connecting every human vessel, station, and outpost in the system. Across the void, thousands of men and women who had spent months preparing for this moment waited for their admiral's words. Asterisk. This is Admiral Chen to all units. Today, the Vorthok Empire has come to our home with the intention of erasing us from existence. They believe their numbers make them invincible. They believe their technology makes them superior. They believe their empire makes them unstoppable. Chen's voice carried the weight of absolute conviction. They are about to learn that they are wrong. As the Admiral's words echoed through the system, the true scope of humanity's preparation became clear. This wasn't just a military operation. It was an entire civilization united in defiance of extinction, from the asteroid miners who had converted their tools into weapons, to the cargo pilots who had transformed their ships into fighters, to the scientists who had turned industrial facilities into fortresses. Every human in the system was ready to fight. The Vorthok fleet continued their advance, unaware that they were no longer the hunters. They had become the prey, and humanity was about to remind the galaxy why underestimating the human spirit was the last mistake any enemy would ever make. The red dawn was breaking over the Kepler system, but the blood it would spill would not be human. The Ghost Protocol, the asteroid belt, had been humanity's industrial heart for decades. A maze of mining stations and cargo routes that fed the growing colonies. Now, as the Vorthok fleet spread through the system like a crimson tide, that familiar landscape was about to become their tomb. Admiral Chen watched the enemy formations penetrate deeper into the belt, their confidence evident in their loose formation. The Vorthok had conquered so many worlds that they had forgotten what desperation could accomplish. They were about to receive a harsh reminder. Ghost Protocol is active, Admiral, Dr. Vasquez reported, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. All stations are synchronized and weapons are hot. The enemy is entering the kill zone. On the bridge of the Defiance, the crew watched in tense silence as the massive enemy fleet moved through the asteroid field. The Vorthok ships dwarfed the rocky debris around them, their crimson hulls gleaming like drops of blood in the starlight. They moved with the methodical precision of predators who had never known defeat. Captain Webb monitored the tactical display with growing anticipation. Admiral elite elements of their fleet are now within optimal range. All Ghost stations report. Ready for your command. Chen nodded, her hand hovering over the activation switch. Around her, the bridge crew held their breath. Months of preparation, countless hours of labor, and the fate of humanity in the Kepler system all came down to this moment. Execute Ghost Protocol, she commanded. Across the asteroid belt, mining stations that had appeared abandoned suddenly erupted with activity. But instead of the familiar industrial hum of ore processing, these facilities unleashed something far more deadly. Mining lasers, redesigned and amplified beyond their original specifications, lanced out from hidden positions. The focused beams, originally designed to cut through solid rock, now carved through Vorthok armor with terrifying efficiency. The first wave of attacks caught the alien fleet completely off guard. A massive Vorthok cruiser, confident in its superiority, suddenly found its port shields failing as a converted mining laser punched through its defenses. The crew barely had time to register the alarm before a second beam pierced the hull, igniting the ship's power core in a brilliant explosion. Aboard the Eternal Conquest, Warlord Kroon staggered as the flagship's bridge shook from nearby explosions. His 4 eyes tracked the tactical display in disbelief as his fleet's formations began to crumble. Ships that had been untouchable moments before were now burning wrecks, victims of weapons that shouldn't have existed. Sub-Commander Vex, report. Kroon snarled, his composure cracking for the first time in decades. The younger officer's claws clicked frantically across his console, trying to make sense of the impossible data. Warlord, we're under attack from multiple positions throughout the asteroid belt. The weapons appear to be modified. Industrial equipment, mining lasers, construction charges, even converted cargo haulers. Kroon's mandibles clicked in rage. Impossible. Our intelligence reports showed no significant military infrastructure in this system. How can primitive miners pose a threat to the Imperial fleet? The answer came in the form of another devastating attack. A squadron of fighters, moving in perfect formation, suddenly found themselves surrounded by what appeared to be debris. But the debris was actually a network of converted cargo containers, each one packed with improvised explosives and guided by simple proximity sensors. The containers detonated in sequence, creating a devastating chain reaction that consumed the entire squadron throughout the asteroid belt. Similar scenes played out as humanity's desperation transformed into deadly ingenuity. Cargo ships that had seemed to be fleeing suddenly revealed their true nature converted. Industrial vessels armed with everything from mining charges to improvised rail guns. They moved through the asteroid field with the familiarity of pilots who had spent years navigating these dangers, using their knowledge of every rock and radiation pocket to their advantage. Commander Okafor coordinated the defensive network from her position on the Defiance, her console alive with tactical data from across the system. Admiral, the enemy is attempting to reform their battle lines. They're pulling back their advanced squadrons and trying to establish a defensive perimeter. Not if we have anything to say about it, Chen replied grimly. Dr. Vasquez, initiate. Phase 2, it's time to show them what human creativity can accomplish. The second phase of the Ghost Protocol was even more audacious than the first. Throughout the asteroid belt, mining stations began to move. What the Vorthok had assumed were stationary installations were actually mobile platforms, equipped with improvised thruster systems that allowed them to relocate at will. The aliens found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to stay in one place, constantly shifting positions and attacking from unexpected angles. But the most devastating surprise was yet to come. As the Vorthok fleet struggled to adapt to the unconventional tactics, they began to notice something troubling about the asteroid field itself. The rocks weren't just obstacles, they were weapons. Humanity had spent months hollowing out asteroids and filling them with explosives, creating massive space mines that could be detonated remotely. When a Vorthok dreadnought passed too close to what appeared to be a harmless chunk of rock, The resulting explosion was visible from 3 star systems away, aboard the Eternal Conquest. Sub-Commander Vex watched in horror as the fleet's casualties. Mounted Warlord, we've lost over 3,000 vessels. The humans are using tactics we've never encountered before. They're not fighting like a conventional military force. They're fighting like ... Like what? Kroon demanded, his voice rising with desperation. Like they have nothing left to lose, Vex whispered. The young officer's words carried a terrible truth. The Vorthok Empire had grown complacent in their dominance, relying on overwhelming force to crush their enemies. But humanity wasn't fighting for conquest or glory. They were fighting for survival. Every miner who had converted their equipment into weapons, every cargo pilot who had transformed their ship into a fighter, every scientist who had turned industrial facilities into fortresses, they all understood that failure meant extinction. Captain Webb monitored the enemy's attempts to regroup with professional satisfaction. Admiral, their command structure is breaking down. Individual ships are abandoning formation and attempting to flee the system. Chen nodded, but her expression remained grave. The Ghost Protocol was working, but it was coming at a terrible cost. Human casualties were mounting as improvised weapon systems overloaded and converted cargo ships were destroyed by return fire. The asteroid belt was becoming a graveyard for both sides, a testament to what desperation could accomplish when paired with human ingenuity. Dr. Vasquez's status report on our ghost stations, Chen requested. The scientist's face was illuminated by the glow of her console as she processed incoming data. 60% of our mining stations are still operational, Admiral. The converted cargo fleet has taken heavy casualties, but they're still engaging enemy targets. The asteroid mines are depleted, but they've done their job. As the battle raged on, the Vorthok fleet found themselves facing an enemy unlike anything in their experience. Human tactics weren't bound by military doctrine or traditional strategy. They were driven by pure creativity and an absolute refusal to accept defeat. Mining equipment became artillery, cargo ships became bombers, and even the asteroids themselves became weapons. Asterisk. Warlord Kroon stood before the tactical display, watching his mighty fleet being torn apart by an enemy that shouldn't have been able to offer any meaningful resistance. The humans had turned their entire industrial infrastructure into a weapon, creating a defense network that was impossible to predict or counter. Sub-Commander, order all remaining vessels to withdraw to the outer system. Kroon commanded, his voice hollow with defeat. We need to regroup and reassess our strategy. But the order came too late. The human forces had anticipated the withdrawal and were ready for it. As the surviving Vorthok ships attempted to flee, they found their escape routes blocked by a final surprise: human vessels that had been disguised as space debris, waiting in the outer system for exactly this moment. The retreating alien fleet ran straight into a carefully prepared ambush. Converted mining ships, their hulls scarred but their weapons still functional, emerged from hiding among the outer asteroids. They attacked with the fury of people defending their homes, their improvised weapons tearing through the retreating formation with devastating effect. Admiral Chen watched the final phase of the battle unfold with mixed emotions. The Ghost Protocol was succeeding beyond her wildest expectations, but the cost was staggering. Human casualties were mounting, and the industrial infrastructure of the Kepler system was being systematically destroyed in the fighting. Admiral, Commander Okafor reported, her voice tight with emotion, enemy fleet strength is down to less than 200 vessels. They're attempting to break through our outer perimeter. Chen nodded grimly. Let them go, Commander. We've made our point. The decision wasn't made out of mercy, but out of necessity. The surviving Vorthok ships were the most damaged and demoralized survivors of what had been the Empire's most powerful fleet. When they returned to their homeworlds, they would carry with them the story of humanity's defiance and the terrible cost of underestimating the human spirit. As the battle drew to a close, only 17 Vorthok vessels managed to escape the Kepler system. They limped away through subspace, their crimson hulls scarred and their crews traumatized by what they had witnessed. The mighty armada that had arrived to crush humanity had been destroyed not by superior technology or overwhelming force, but by the ingenuity and desperation of a species that refused to surrender. On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Chen stood before the tactical display, watching the last enemy signatures disappear into subspace. The Ghost Protocol had succeeded, but at a cost that would be felt for generations. The Kepler systems, industrial infrastructure lay in ruins, and thousands of brave men and women had given their lives to defend their homes. Captain Webb, begin search and rescue operations, Chen ordered, and send a message to Earth Command. Tell them the Vorthok Empire now knows that humanity will not go quietly into the night. As the rescue operations began, stories of heroism and sacrifice emerged from across the system. Miners who had stayed at their posts until the last moment, cargo pilots who had rammed their ships into enemy vessels, scientists who had given their lives to ensure the weapon systems functioned properly. Each story was a testament to the human spirit and the power of ordinary people to accomplish extraordinary things when faced with extinction. The 17 surviving Vorthok ships would return to their empire with a story that would echo through the galaxy. They had witnessed the destruction of the most powerful fleet in known history, defeated not by advanced technology or superior numbers, but by the creativity and courage of a species that refused to accept defeat. The Crimson Armada had come to the Kepler system to demonstrate the Empire's power. Instead, they had learned a lesson that would change the course of galactic history. Humanity was not just another species to be conquered. They were something far more dangerous. They were survivors, innovators, and above all, they were united in their refusal to surrender. The Red Dawn had indeed broken over the Kepler system, but the blood that had been spilled belonged to those who had underestimated the power of the human spirit. The galaxy would never make that mistake again. Asterisk.